So without further ado, let me introduce Donna Newland. I know Donna best as one of our Southern California ski instructors, or rather avalanche instructors, although I can tell you she can give you a ski clinic on telemark skiing. Tonight she's here to talk about SAR, something that she knows well. She has 22 years with SAR and currently serves as the director of the Inland Empire Search and Rescue Council. So Donna Newland, take it away.
Okay. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm excited to see a handful of my fellow SAR folks joining us tonight, so I encourage them to chime in. Some of them know more about search and rescue than I do, so this will be fun. This will be a good conversation, especially in light of the avalanche incident we had a week or two ago in Baldy Bowl. So we may talk about that later this evening. Okay. All right. So like Keith said, sorry about that delay. I'm with San Bernardino County Search and Rescue. And as you guys all know, San Bernardino County is huge. So there are some unique things about San Bernardino County, but our adjacent counties will be running their programs somewhat similar. So like I said, San Bernardino County is enormous. So the way we handle search and rescue in this county, and well, let me backtrack a second. My objective for tonight is, my feeling is that for those of you that aren't familiar with search and rescue, if you are more familiar with how we operate, when something happens to you in the backcountry, you'll be more equipped to handle the situation and understand what resources are coming your way and kind of what's happening behind the scenes once you've activated the emergency system. So in San Bernardino County, this is how we would run things. So if you're on Baldy or San Gorgonio or San Jacinto, well, San Jacinto is Riverside, but it's very similar, or up here in the San Bernardino mountains near Big Bear, this is what is going to be happening if something goes awry with you. So in this county, we are divided up into different units. Mounted SAR, ground SAR, we have dog teams. We're kind of all over the place. Thank you for that. Okay, like I said, we're in a way we're plate spinners because we have so many diverse environments in our county. A lot of us train to do a lot of different things. So we may be off-roading. We may be using aviation or our heli-tac skills. We might get inserted. We might be getting in and out of helicopters. There's a separate dog team that works with the different teams. They run tracking and trailing dogs. They run cadaver dogs. We have regular bread and butter ground teams, which is sort of our core basic skills. Where we're going in and out on foot. We're using a lot of navigation skills. We have medical training. Some of us are EMTs. A lot of us are just basic first aiders. We'll do a lot of litter carries, just basic searching. We do technical rescue, which is a specialty that I think 5 of the teams in our county are authorized to perform. So technical rope rescue requires a lot of additional training. And the slide on the right, we even do, at least our team does, we train with the local ski area in the event that they have a massive lift equipment failure. And we are trained to help them with evacuations of customers off of their chairlifts, which is kind of a fun thing we get to train on every year. The county has specialized teams. We have a underwater team, a dive team. We have mounted posse, where the ground teams also are horse owners and would respond with their horses to go out on horseback. And we have underground teams that specialize in mine and cave rescue. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these people you see in the pictures are also ground SAR members. So they not only train to do the basic skills, but they, in addition, will also serve on these specialized teams. And then getting to what we really want to talk about tonight, Alpinestar. In our county, Alpinestar is definitely a more advanced skill set. We have to not only be fully qualified in all the ground search and rescue training that we require, but we also have to be current and trained in all of the technical rope rescue that our county has. And they also, everybody that's alpine qualified in our county has to go through a whole separate mountaineering course that takes a couple weekends. And it's, anyway, so the people that go and respond to the alpine searches, which would be anything in an environment where cold is a factor, or altitude, or when snow and ice is present and could be a factor in the rescue, would be Alpinestar. So in these pictures, you can see in the middle a picture of an organized rescue, which would be essentially a body recovery after the fact, after an avalanche has happened. And if any of you have taken any of the avalanche safety classes, you might have gone over some of these skills. The picture on the right is doing an extraction of an injured person in the winter. So getting down to the nitty gritty, I think it's important for everybody to understand what happens when you push that button or make that phone call. First of all, if you're the one that has pushed that button of your DeLorme InReach or used your cell phone to call 911, you are now what's called a reporting party. So if I say the word RP, reporting party, you'll know what I'm talking about. That would be you if you're the person who called for help. I strongly suggest everybody start carrying an InReach or some sort of personal satellite transmitter. It's really revolutionized the rescue business. It really makes a huge difference. Those satellite transmitters, because they now have the two-way feature, gives us the ability to communicate with you and find out what's going on a lot faster if you're still in the backcountry. If you have a cell phone and you have poor service, try to get a text out. Texts, as you know, will often work when cell phones won't. And in terms of who to call, if you're not sure what agency to call, whether you should call the state park or San Bernardino County or LA County or who, don't worry about that. Just call 911. The 911 dispatcher will connect you to the person you need to talk to get help going. Once you call or activate the system, a local deputy will respond, or will try to respond, and take the initial report. That's important because it depends on what the situation is. It would be if you're calling from Landers and you need a search and rescue, the resources they send may be very different than if you are on Baldy Bowl or on San Gorgonio. And the local deputy or the initial deputy also needs to confirm it's a legitimate search and rescue. It could have resolved after you called 911. Could just be a prank, whatever the situation is. He'll confirm, or she will confirm, that it's legitimate and determine the resources and the sense of urgency that needs to be taken to resolve the situation. So based on that initial report, they will start deploying resources. In this county, that will be almost always, if the weather is flyable, they will start a helicopter. So if you're in the backcountry and it's not too windy or we don't have cloud cover, there's a good chance that your first contact with search and rescue will be via a helicopter. And or a ground team heading your direction. A caveat with the ground team, though, especially if a helicopter can't fly, is there is going to be a delay. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the initial response will usually be a helicopter and the closest qualified team to your location. If the closest qualified team cannot resolve the situation for whatever reason, the county, whether it be Riverside or San Bernardino, will start calling in adjacent teams. For example, On Mount Baldy, which is our county's problem child, the local team is West Valley, and there's a few West Valley members on this conversation, so they can chime in. But if West Valley can't resolve the incident with the people that they have available, they'll start calling in adjacent teams, such as my team over in Twin Peaks or San Gorgonio, which Barbara Dickinson is a member of. I saw her on here, or San Bernardino Mountain Star, and Christine is a member of that team. So we have a lot of those teams represented here today. So we all know each other, and we all work together all the time. So we'll all help each other out. But if we can't resolve that, even with all the resources in this county, our county SAR coordinator will contact the state of California and activate the mutual aid response system, which will start bringing in resources from all over the state. So there is a cavalry out there. You could have hundreds of search and rescue members on any given incident over the course of the incident. But you have to realize that even though you have hundreds of searchers within a couple hours radius of you, if you or your friend is laying on the ground with a fractured leg and you are waiting for us all to get there, you need to realize you need a little bit of a reality check. First of all, our response time. So let's say you're hiking up to San Bernardino Peak and you trip on the trail and you break your ankle. You got up at what, 3, 4 in the morning and drove to the trailhead. You might have started hiking at 7 in the morning. And let's say it took you 5, 6 hours to get up to where you ended up getting hurt. Well, we have to do the same thing. We are not sitting at the trailhead waiting to respond up the trail to you. We are at home, we're at work, we're out on a different training, we may even be on a different incident. So it's going to take us time to get to the trailhead, and it's going to take us as much time, if not longer, for us to send a hasty team up the trail and make initial contact with you if a helicopter is not available. That's a long time, and it's going to seem like a lot longer time if you're the one that's laying on the ground with a broken ankle. Also, keep in mind that in our county, we have a lot of hazardous terrain that requires specialized skill sets to access. And like I said, the Alpine search and rescue qualification is one of the most stringent ones we have in this county because it is so hazardous. So there is oftentimes that group of people is really spread thin. So it may be we can get a lot of ground troops on the ground, but depending on your location, we need to get the right people in that area to access you. Personnel availability. We may be, if it's Saturday morning, odds are you're going to get a pretty good turnout. But if it's a Tuesday morning, we all need to respond from work, so it's going to take us a little bit longer. A couple months ago, we had a search out in Giant Rock. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Giant Rock in Landers, California, but it is in the middle of nowhere. And if you're at Giant Rock and you continue miles to the north and truly get into the middle of nowhere, this was actually on the 29 Palms Marine Base. So this is truly the middle of nowhere on an incident, on a search. And then we get a call that there's a rescue in progress on Mount Baldy. So that's a 3 or 4 hour drive. So luckily that day, West Valley had enough personnel and they were able to resolve that situation while other people on that lander search were and I already mentioned the hazardous conditions. And I'll be honest with you guys, if you are in the backcountry in the wintertime and you're in avalanche terrain and there's been active avalanche activity in the area, that's going to limit us getting to you. We are not going to send our personnel into a situation where they could be injured or killed to get to you. And that's just the hard cold truth. We're going to evaluate the situation. We're going to get a hold of Alan or Keith or Jeff, and we're going to get an avalanche report, and we're going to do our due diligence before we deploy our personnel into those conditions. And if anybody has any questions or comments, chime in. Keith can let me know if anybody has it. And then what I wanted to do is just take a few minutes, and this is like a 12-hour class condensed in about 10 minutes here, but some big generalities. But I wanted to talk about just some good versus poor outcomes. Just maybe put a little noodle in your brain next time you go out into the backcountry. And this is just based on 20 years of going on search and rescues and seeing some trends on the incidents that turn out with happy endings and the ones that turn out with not so happy endings. So I divided all, oops, there we go. I came up with 3 things. It's going to be preparation, communication, or organization. So whether it turns out good or bad, preparation, probably the single most common denominator of search and rescues in Southern California. And I know my search and rescue buddies are going to be chuckling, even though they're on mute. It is the failure of the subjects to appreciate the legitimacy of terrain in this area. We have mountains that are in very close proximity to major city centers, and we are blessed with really nice weather the majority of the time. But in our area, when the weather changes, it is very easy for somebody from downtown Los Angeles to drive to a trailhead wearing their yoga pants and their Vans tennis shoes and their micro spikes, the React tracks, and access a trail and very quickly get into an area that rivals the state of Alaska for its hazardous terrain. So preparation comes down to not being complacent, appreciating the challenges, being prepared, dressing appropriately, having the right gear, and knowing how to use that gear. We recover a lot of bodies with yak tracks wrapped around their ankles and brand new ice axes wrapped around their wrist. Communication is another big category. The difference between communicating your plan to somebody back home, to the other people in your group, deciding what you're going to do and agreeing on it, having a way to communicate with each other, with the outside world, is a huge factor. And then finally, organization. Staying organized as a group, following that plan that you communicated, and this is right up there with those common factors of poor outcome missions that we've seen over the last several decades, is failing to stay together as a group. Almost every fatality incident I've been involved in has been either a solo hiker or somebody who started with a group and became separated. Either they got too far behind, or they went out ahead, or somehow they got separated, or they just started out by themselves. We very rarely have issues finding people that are in pairs or larger. We find them eventually. If you're with somebody, another person, your odds of being found grow exponentially. So preparation, communication, and organization. So I have a couple examples of a couple incidents that we can break down a little bit and talk about what they did, good and bad, in all 3 of these categories that resulted in the outcome that it did. And so this was an interesting one. This was in West Valley's area. I joke that even though West Valley is not my home team and I don't live in that area, I've spent more time on missions with West Valley's team, I think, than I have my own. That's how busy they are. So Cucamonga Peak Memorial Day weekend 2019. I don't know about you guys, but on Friday of that weekend, I was probably sitting somewhere warm in the sun, probably having an adult beverage and wondering what I was going to be doing the rest of the weekend. It was beautiful weather. There were tens of thousands of people in Southern California that decided that this was going to be a great weekend to go up to the mountains and go for a nice hike. Right? Why not? The south-facing slopes were relatively free of snow. It hadn't snowed in a little while. The weather was great. Trailheads were packed, and all was good, except this. So, so Memorial Day weekend, I don't know if you remember, it's a couple years ago, but it started raining on I think it was Saturday. It started raining. It was miserable. It started out pouring rain, and then at about, I don't know, maybe 7,000, 8,000 feet, it turned to snow. So there was a couple young men. They were teenagers. They were brothers. They decided that they were going to climb Cucamonga Peak this weekend, and they were dressed, wearing pants, shirts, day packs, probably had a lunch and some water in it, and that was about it. And they climbed Cucamonga Peak, and they did find that the trail was relatively free of snow until they got way high. And then I think they summited, and then on their way down, I'm not sure, they ended up on the north side where all the snow had remained from previous storms, and they missed the trail, and they continued down the north side where the snow was extremely deep, and they realized they were lost. Luckily, they had cell service, and I believe, and Bob, chime in if I don't have this right, I believe they were able to get through to either 911 or their parents, but search and rescue was started. We hiked up in the pouring rain. So again, this was Memorial Day weekend, hot and sunny, and you wouldn't know it because it might as well have been the dead of winter. Hey, Christine. So the lady on the left, she's on in this chat. This is Christine. So she's wearing my my huge puffy jacket, and she loved it so much, she went out and bought her own a couple days later. So I was joking with Alan earlier. He did a fireside chat, I think last week, on the contents of his pack. Well, what we carry in our packs is right there. It's not exactly lightweight. And the reason we carry such heavy packs is these two young men, these are the brothers. More or less everything they have on, except for their wet pants, belongs to one of these three people or myself, because I'm the one that took the picture. So their hats, their headlamps, their puffy jackets, this guy's wearing two of them, their hiking poles, their gloves, everything they have came out of our backpacks. That's why we carry such big packs. So, so preparation. So maybe not so much because they didn't look at the forecast and they didn't prepare to be out in that kind of weather. They didn't know where they were. They were counting on staying on the trail. So when they lost the trail, they didn't have map or compass or GPS or anything to help them navigate. But communication, they did. They had communication with the outside world. And most importantly, they didn't panic and they stayed together. So really, it ended up being a good outcome. So this was us on the main trail at Buckhorn Saddle getting hoisted out, much to the entertainment of the dozens and dozens of hikers that were hiking on that trail that day. So that was an example of a good outcome. Here's an example of a poor outcome, unfortunately. This gentleman decided to climb Mount Baldy, also on a day where the weather was going to be changing dramatically. He was with a group, but it was not a group that he knew very well. I think it might have been like a meetup group, I'm not sure. But he hiked up with a group of people that wisely decided to turn back at a certain point. But this gentleman decided that he would push on alone and continue to the summit up the Bear Flats Trail. So we believe he did summit. Unfortunately, When he did, the weather changed. It became pea soup fog with very poor visibility. The weather dropped. He was not equipped for mountain conditions, snow, very hard pack ice and snow. And unfortunately, he appears to have fallen down the, I guess it would be the northeast side off of Baldy somehow. I'm not really sure. But in this situation, because he was solo, we didn't know where he was. It became a huge operation involving not only San Bernardino County, but searchers from all over California. And I found this on Gaia. If you guys don't have Gaia, it's an excellent app to use. It's a smartphone app. You can download maps to use offline. But this is a Gaia. It was interesting. This green line, these green lines are obviously a helicopter track log, because if I were to able to zoom out, you would see that the track starts and ends and takes a fuel break at an airport. So this was obviously, I'm assuming, somebody sitting inside one of San Bernardino County's helicopters had left their Gaia app running this day. So this was the helicopter search area on on one of the search days. So Mr. Mokapati was located somewhere in this area, I think, somewhere near Fish Fork. Anyways, not important. But anyway, hiking solo, didn't communicate his plan, was not prepared, and unfortunately did not have a good outcome. You can't tell by this photo, but this entire area was searched very thoroughly by hundreds of searchers in very, very hazardous terrain. And unfortunately, at the end of the operation, our brother SAR member was killed while he was trying to participate in the search. So this is, yeah. So this was just sort of a reality check that it's great that we're all out there recreating, but it's your responsibility to do it responsibly, because if you don't, they can kind of maybe now have more of an appreciation of what's going on behind the scenes and the resources and the risks that are involved in trying to save your butt if something bad goes wrong. So that's kind of the end of that. And then I have to do my my shameless plug. Those of you that are not search and rescue members, the rest of you are exactly the demographic that we are recruiting to join our teams. You clearly have a passion and an interest for being out in these environments, and you have a fitness and an interest. And I can't speak for the rest of my SAR friends, but it's a wonderful way to take what you already love to do and apply it to a very, very rewarding public service. So if you can find it in yourself to donate the hours, it's the best thing I've ever done. So that's sbsar.org is where you would go to get more information on that. Or I'll give you, Keith can put my email in the chat maybe or something. And then because a lot of us are skiers, and I'm also a member of the National Ski Patrol, I had to throw in the obligatory ski photo. So there you go. If you're interested in being a member of the Ski Patrol, which do a lot of rescues and searches within the ski area boundaries and do a lot of excellent training, go to socalnsp.org for more information on how to join the National Ski Patrol. So, any questions or anything else?
I have a question for you, Donna. How many active members, SAR members, do you have in San Bernardino County?
Ooh, I would imagine that there's 20 teams in this county, 20 SAR teams, and if the team's average of 15 members per team, there's a couple hundred search and rescue members in this county. It's a big organization.
We're at 550.
Hey, Mike, how are you? I didn't see you.
I'm very well.
550
That's the last number I was given from volunteer forces.
Wow.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Mike. Approximately how many calls do you go on per year
Ooh.
in the county? How many call outs do you have total amongst all those teams? Just a guess.
Boy. Mike, you want to answer that one? I couldn't even start to guess. Oh,
Are we talking countywide, sir, or just her team or a specific team?
countywide.
I was thinking countywide.
Countywide, the last numbers that I recall were, it came down to about 1 per day. So somewhere in the 3.5 per year, 350 a year.
Wow. So that's
a
almost
lot
one a
of
day.
A lot of those will resolve without an actual ground team being deployed. Aviation will be able to handle a lot of those.
That's correct. Thanks for adding that, Donna, because it's not like for everyone in search and rescues, a team actually gets deployed. Sometimes they're rescued by the deputies that are on scene, or as Donna mentioned, 40 King. But I think the number is right around 350 per year. May not encompass every search and rescue team being deployed, though. Thanks, Donna.
So Donna, Patty asks, is there a maximum age for a SAR team membership?
No, there is not. There's a minimum age of 18, but there is not a maximum age.
That's a good question.
And most of the teams have a role for people that feel that they no longer want to go out in the field. And sometimes it's called a support role, like Barbara just sent a message saying that she's now in a support role. So you can work the command post, which is a critical role. So you don't necessarily have to join SAR to carry a big pack and climb up and down rocks. You can join to support the troops that are in the field by working the command post or helping with logistics and different their tasks.
Hey, Donna, this is Barbara. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can. Hi.
Just wanted to second again your recommendation that people carry an inReach of some device. We had a call out, would have been February of 2020 before everything shut down. Fellow got lost up behind the jump off. He had dropped his inReach, and our team that went in, the only way we could communicate, I was doing command post radio, is the fellow out there on our team. He had an inReach. He was sending messages to the deputy coordinator, and he was then relaying them to me so I could put in the radio log. We didn't even use the radios. We used the inReach and text messages by phone. So radios don't work in some areas. There was a dead zone.
Yes, those inReach devices, because of the two-way messaging, has really helped the way we find people. That has been huge.
Hey, Donna.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Tom.
Hi, this is Tom. Hi, I'm on a SAR team. I work with Donna a lot. So one thing just to reiterate, and I'm glad you hit this so much, is the lack of preparation. And we see that all the time. When we debrief people, it's always, for most hikers, most of us on the call outs are very experienced. We carry a lot more, but it's the 10 essentials. Everyone hears the 10 essentials. We ask them about the 10 essentials, and they're lucky to have 3 or 4 of the items. So just one item in particular that helps so much, and it's so funny the response we get, especially when they've been searching for them and they end up their 3-hour hike turns into like a 14-hour ordeal. We says, "Where's your flashlight?" And they say, "Well, I only planned on a day hike," right? So it's, again, they're taking for granted. They don't take seriously the terrain, and a flashlight, especially. Phones go dead, but a flashlight, when someone's lost in the dark, it helps tremendously. Mm-hmm. So again, it goes back to the preparedness. We run into that all the time. People, even just having something as the spot device, something like that, is absolutely great. But just simple things such as a flashlight would really help us shorten searches. But unfortunately, it's the preparedness that we see, lack of preparedness we see all the time.
Good point. Great. And then with the flashlight too, the other thing it does is it is a beacon for the helicopter. If you have a light source at night, it'll look like that pyramid in Las Vegas for a helicopter that has night vision. They'll find you if you have a light source.
And Patty points out that the low-tech signal mirror works during the day.
During the day,
as well.
It's great. But, oh, and that's worth mentioning. I mentioned that oftentimes the helicopter will be first in the area. Do not underestimate how difficult it is for that crew to see you on the ground. You need to go to huge lengths to make yourself visible. I was once standing in a snowfield wearing a red coat, waving a Mylar blanket, and I could not get their attention. And they were looking for me. So make big, if you can think about this, if you're standing looking up at the helicopter, all they can see is the top of your head and your shoulders. So if you can lay on the ground and make snow angels and wave large colorful objects and run around and really wave, just be very aggressive and make yourself very, very visible, because they will have a very hard time seeing.
Jerry suggests carrying 2 headlamps that have the ability to flash a signal. And
Yes.
Alan points out with spare batteries.
Yes. Yes, we are, the SAR people are required to do that. We all have 2 headlamps with spare batteries.
I never leave. Doesn't matter if I'm going out for a 2-hour snow study. There's always 2 headlamps in my pack and extra batteries and an inReach. I don't go anywhere without it anymore.
If I could add something to that, redundancy in all your systems. So redundancy in communication, you want a minimum of two ways to communicate. Redundancy in knowing where you're at. So if you're carrying 1 GPS, it don't take too much to carry 2. As you mentioned, a light source, you need redundancy. Clothing, you need redundancy. Everything that's in your pack or that you're carrying in the field, within reason, you should have redundancy. Thank you.
On the redundancy too, I would say have a map and a compass and some orienteering skills, because all those electronic devices fail.
Yes, and that's the other thing. Your cell phone in the winter, if it's cold, your battery will deplete before you know it.
Oh yeah.
Donna, I have a question for you. For a basic ground team member, how many hours of training and what kind of training is required before they can join a team?
Good question. Most teams will, at a very minimum, will train 2 full days a month. We have mandatory team training. We have mandatory team meetings. When you're new on the team, you have to go through all the initial training. So it's quite a bit of hours. There's a basic search and rescue academy you go to the first year, which is 2 or 3 weekends. And then you have all the specialty trainings that you want to add on to your qualification card. It's quite a bit. It's a big commitment. And it's also, most of the teams, we're not looking for members that are going to be in and out. They're not going to join for a year or 2 and then move on with their lives. We're really looking at a long-term commitment and to be able to put that kind of time and energy into getting you trained. So it's
well then,
yeah.
double kudos to Heather from Massachusetts, who says that she's finishing her training this weekend.
Yay!
Well done, well done. She and a partner. Jacqueline asks, and I'll ask Jacqueline to clarify. She says, how many hours for support? I'm not sure if she means how many, what kind of commitment, training.
That's actually a good question. So and this is going to be different depending on the county program, but in San Bernardino County, regular members are required to attend a certain amount of, certain percentage of meetings and trainings. And I believe it's 60%, maybe 70%. Some teams require more. If you're a support member, oftentimes that requirement will be slightly less. But at least on our team, initially, you are required to meet the high level so that we can get you trained. But once you are qualified as a support member, I think the requirement in our county drops down to maybe 50%.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Allison asks, how much emphasis in training is placed on familiarity with certain trail areas or terrain?
A lot. Each team is assigned, it works out of a particular sheriff's station. For example, my team is in Twin Peaks. Bob and Tom are based out of Fontana. Barbara is in Ukaipa. Christine is downtown San Bernardino. So we're all stationed in different areas. So we are We know our particular areas very well. A lot of our trainings, we just call them area familiarization, and that's all we do. We just go out and explore a trail and get to know it. And so that actually quite a bit of our training is area familiarization.
Very good question. Thanks, Allison. Do we have any other questions for Donna tonight? All right. Well, our attendees have asked you their questions. Donna, you have some questions for our attendees, but before you ask those questions, let's throw it over to Alan to show us what we are raffling off tonight.